welcome to the Gen X Experience, the Black Gen X Experience, with your host, Mr. Perspective, along with my illustrative co-host, Jrob. How you doing, my brother?
Greetings, my brother. How are you? I'm great.
Good. So let's jump right into it. The RNC has gone full MAGA. Give me your take on the Republican National Convention.
The optics were about as good as the Republican Party could have hoped for. They presented a party of unity. They were able to present an outreach to smaller communities. And so in terms of optics, I think they had a great convention. They were able to capitalize on the publicity following the attempted assassination of former President Trump. And so in that regards, I think they did a great job. Where they were lacking is in the policy platform, the presentation of their agenda, and what it is that they actually plan to do in a Trump second administration. Notice the absence of Project 2025. They didn't discuss it at all because that platform is a disaster for the country.
Is it a disaster for the Republican Party as it stands right now? Because what I saw from their perspective is a party that went full MAGA. We could almost call it the MAGA party as opposed to calling it a Republican Party. And that Project 25, even the people who I've talked to who support the Republican Party, they don't flinch from that. They don't run from that, and they kind of embrace it in many ways. So what are your thoughts on, was that a mistake in not embracing it in this moment?
I think from a political standpoint, it was the right thing to do, because while members of the Republican Party and obviously supporters of former President Trump are going to speak positively of the platform, including Project 2025, it's not popular at a national level. And I think if he is elected, which it seems likely at this juncture, once these policies are implemented, some of those same supporters are going to speak out, not against the president, if it is Donald Trump, but against those policies. For example, the fact that the average American family would see a tax increase while a family making $5 million a year will see a tax reduction.
It's very interesting that when we talk about the party going MAGA and just their platform, the co-chair of the Republican National Committee is Laura Trump, right? And throughout this process, and I'll get a little bit to more later, you heard more and more about Eric Trump and his sons, and everybody literally getting behind Donald Trump. And with that being said, their platform is almost, I don't even see it on the website. I just went to go check because I meant to go do this earlier. So I just went to the website, GOP.com, and I don't even see their platform. Normally about this time, parties have their platform, what they stand for, what they're fighting for. Okay, I found it. Republican jobs, political education, internships. Nope, I don't find it.
No, you won't find it, my brother.
No, normally, this is about the time you do. So either way, what I'm saying is, you're right. Them not putting it out there right now. I don't know if people are running away from that platform. I know the Democrats, okay, maybe that's it. I've been kind of waffling a little bit because I'm trying to put my thoughts together. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't give the Democratic Party any fuel for their, from them saying, you know what, Project 25, Project 25, Project 25. So if we don't come out that's one less talking point for you to have. You can say we don't have a platform, but you can't come out and say, oh, we could show you where they put Project 25 as their platform.
That's the reason why I referenced Project 2025, because there is no official, quote unquote, Republican Party platform that they are promoting and publishing and speaking on policy as Trump's candidacy continues. And so Project 2025, although it is put out by the American Heritage Foundation, as we said previously, it is the next best thing in terms of what a second Trump presidency would entail.
When you talked a little bit earlier about the optics of being amazing for them, give us a little bit more detail on what you saw from your perspective of the optics that they were presenting at the Republican National Convention.
Well, they were able to present country, God, and Trump. Probably in reverse order. Trump, God, and country is
100%.
probably the order in which the MAGA party views those, their leadership. They were able to bring in some minority speakers, not just the political speakers such as Representative Byron Donalds from Florida, and of course Senator Tim Scott, but they were also able to bring in some of the culture vultures, such as Amber Rose, who was, no longer identifies as Black, although previously she said that she does.
She flirted with it from time to time. Let's say that.
It's okay. The Black community understands. We're used to that. And so, yeah, they were able to present, in that light, just in terms of optics, it looked good. And I think the main thing is they were able to avoid deep policy discussion. I think the one thing that did come away in terms of policy platform was their plan for mass deportation. Yeah. And so that was one policy point that they were able to get across to the public, of course, with their signs. But I don't think any of the candidates, other than the president himself, really mentioned that. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about his nomination acceptance speech?
I thought it was a little bland to me. It didn't. I thought it was intentionally bland. Let me say that. Mm-hmm. I thought he wanted to come across as a great unifier for all groups, as much as he can, and not alienate his own. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, it wasn't too deep in policy. The immigration point is from the polls and everything else in the country right now, is a winning strategy for them. That's where they get a lot of positive press and build the wall. It's kind of like the same rhetoric that he won in 2016 with, and they've kind of prepped the public for that. So that was cool. Everything else, it was just bland. It wasn't anything revolutionary. Nothing stood out, and I think it was intentionally so. So that's kind of my just quick takeaway from his speech. What were your initial thoughts of the speech?
To be honest, and frank, I thought I was shocked at its length. Yeah, he spoke for over an hour and a half. And so that is surprising, not just in terms of the stamina that it takes to give a national speech for that length of time, but my goodness, what are you talking about for that long in terms of...
He didn't talk about anything. I mean,
exactly.
He literally rehashed his same talking points that he normally gives, and it just shows the power when people are with you, they with you. It don't even matter what you say. Exactly. When they with you, you can go out and talk about, you can read the cereal box, as they say, and people gonna rock with you because they already, you got them. And it was very lackluster, to say the least, for me. But like I said, it was designed so don't give away anything. We're in a pole position. Just keep exciting the people and go from there. You said earlier about the Black representation, and this is the Black Gen X experience. The Republican Party outreach to Black people is still non-existent. I seen a video with Amber Rose and some white MAGA rapper.
Was it Kid Rock?
No, it wasn't Kid Rock. It was some country MAGA rapper. Okay. But with that being said, the outreach, it reminded me similar, to be honest with you, of what the Democratic Party did, with take your booty to the poll type thing. The political approach to black people is so similar on both sides to me. It's just striking in terms of give them nothing but symbolism or performative rhetoric. I don't know, it's kind of weird to me. So, and Tim Scott and Donalds were clear to say that the Republican Party and Amber Rose is not racist. That was despite everything you got seen from us, heard from us.
Right.
We're not racist. And you know what? There is maybe some truth to that, but the racists are super comfortable with y'all.
Well, let me ask this question, since you compared the two parties. What are the tangibles for Black Americans that were discussed during this MAGA convention?
The same ones that's probably going to be discussed at the Democratic convention.
That's not an answer.
No, it's nothing.
But the Democrats convention hasn't happened yet, so we can't compare it to a future.
Yeah, I said probably, but no.
I tell you what, since you did that, let me just push back with the president's speech at the NAACP convention, where he actually mentioned, one specific policy that you could say, you could make a logical argument, whether you agree or not on its impact or whether you think it's worth its weight. And that's the funding that this administration has given to the HBCUs. And I know in particular that's important in Florida because we have a governor here and a state university system that is intent on destroying not just the HBCUs, one of the preeminent in the nation, the number one HBCU, Florida A&M University, but also the public education system, in order to dumb down, what the public can learn in terms of the truth of the culture in this country.
How many HBCUs are for? Like 4? Like Ed Waters, Florida Memorial, Bethune, and FAMU, right?
Yes,
Did I missing one?
FAMU is the only public one.
Yeah, FAMU is the only public one, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But there's 4 total in the state. Yep. Mm-hmm. No, Florida's history with Black people goes deep, especially in terms of education, in terms of who's been produced and leading the way for a long time, actually, for America, and especially Black America, in terms of educating its populace, right? And I think that can't be disputed. But with that being said, the Republican Party offers nothing directly, but then we'll get more into that. I wish we had a platform because I wanted to dig deep into that, but there was nothing to dig deep into. So,
well, when we get to that platform, we can talk about not what they offer, but what they plan to take away, because that seems to be their platform. It's not what we're going to give you, it's what we're not going to allow you and others from outside of the country to do.
Okay, well, I guess let me say this. Let me ask you this. And I know the answer, but I guess when you say what do they offer Black people, the one thing that they do, especially for Black men, it is that mass deportation. That's actually a net positive for Black men, especially in terms of the jobs that get you into. And that's been, I've seen research studies that go back a long way before the new political rhetoric, that's who immigration hurts specifically, because of Black jobs. Because you talked about that earlier. What is a Black job? Well, Black men specifically are into those entry-level jobs that require manual labor, right? And when those go away, it is a direct impact on the Black population.
Well, I think the record unemployment numbers for African Americans under the Biden administration is a tangible pushback to that argument. Also, too, there has been research dating back to the 60s that illegal immigration actually is a positive for the American economy, because those illegal immigrants are taking the labor jobs that the African Americans, the white Americans, the East Indian Americans, and the East Asian Americans are not really seeking. And so while African American men are seeking entry-level labor jobs, typically
and stuff like that, yeah,
they're not seeking, but the agricultural jobs and the jobs that move with the seasonal work, those jobs are primarily, that labor force comes from the migrant community. And I'm familiar with that on an anecdotal level, because here in Tampa, we have a growing population of those students in our educational system. And so I've been, teaching here this will be my 25th year. And
Congratulations.
yes, sir. And my wife has been a teacher now, an administrator for 30 years. And so, we see that population and how they employ those jobs that even our community is not going to work because they require such intensive labor at a low cost, and they're seasonal. And so it's not going to be consistent. You have to be willing to move. And so, and so that would be a good discussion, because that is a policy talking point that the MAGA party really is pushing, and it has some traction. And so I think one of the things that's one of the areas where the Democrats have done a poor job of not only touting their record, but attacking this presentation that the immigrants are the problem.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's hard it's like one of those things too that people feel and they can see. And, if you tell me about the job rates, you know what I mean? Yeah, it doesn't carry the same weight as those images and what you're seeing from the people who are in these, especially those cities, who are trying to get those jobs. We've seen, the migrant workers like on those construction sites. And those are the ones I'm talking about specifically. Yeah, but you're spot on, and you're 100% right when you talk about how it's helped move the economy. But the economy isn't black people, you know what I mean, in terms of that specific type of conversation. So, no, I think
I think you're absolutely right. And the video, the speaker in the video, he was really referring to the benefit for the elite in terms of how they help businesses to, keep. And we saw that in Florida when there was a law passed here by the state that required documentation for labor immigrants. And of course, that caused a mass, quitting of jobs by the illegal population. And then Florida businesses were shut down. And so it's really not the middle class that benefits from this, but it's the upper class. And so because they work these jobs, but then they don't get the benefits. And that's the other part. They're not able to go into the welfare system. They're not able to get, food stamps or medical services or anything like that because they're illegal. And so that's another benefit that they bring. But again, as you said, it doesn't help anybody other than the elites.
And then you talk about, the number one in any business, the number one expense is obviously paying the employers, paying for the medical insurance and paying for those things you got to pay into. So if, it goes back to the same old thing with slavery, right? The elite benefited massively for not having to pay. I mean, I always give the analogy, just imagine if you could live in your place for 5 years and didn't have to pay your mortgage or pay rent. You up.
Exactly.
You up. You all the way up.
Profits are up.
No matter where you at or what you're doing, just that one thing, not even the other things that's associated with that, but just not having to pay rent, you all the way up. So I think that kind of, okay. So let's move to the JD Vance. We called it. I want to say that. It was so cool because it was real time us just looking at the candidate list and giving our analysis, and right. We landed. So that just shows that's why you need to like and subscribe, because you will get no information like that nowhere else. And even if you do, they're not as cool as us. So rock with us in that terms. So JD Vance is the pick. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a good pick for Trump to try to bring out his base. I think it fits the strategy of let's bring out those who are supporters of Donald Trump, and also the conservatives who are going to go along because they have no choice. Because as you said, this is now the MAGA party. This is now Donald Trump's party. He solidified it for the third election cycle. He is the dominant figure, the dominant force going forth. And so it was a great pick in the sense that he is a younger, more articulate version of Donald Trump himself. And so he's going to be able to talk the talk and present it with a little bit more refinement. And so as some of the political commentators have said, they've described him as a dangerous pick because they fear he's going to improve the delivery of the message. And so I think for Donald Trump and political purposes, I think it's a good pick. The concerns that I've heard is his inexperience and how is he going to perform national stage for a continued amount of exposure with this inexperience. And so he has a lot of questions also in terms of some flip-flopping that he's done. I can remember a time where flip-flop was a term that Republicans used to describe Democrats. But I think it's safe to say now at this point, because of Donald Trump's ascendancy to the top of the MAGA party, there's been a lot of flip-flopping on the conservative side. And as you said, it's not even recognizable anymore as a conservative or Republican party. So in that regard, it's going to be interesting to see how the young man performs. But I have a suspicion that he'll do okay. You know, he'll have an occasional stumble here or there, like they all do, because it's such a pressure cooker, similar to what Kamala Harris herself has experienced. You know, once you have a track record, it's easy for people to take shots at you on what you've done. And while he's only been a senator for a short period of time, because of his success in writing in his novel Hillbilly Elegy, you know, he has some stances out there. And then of course Twitter, or as is known now X, is unforgiving, and so he has a lot of former tweets that he's going to have to answer for as well. So it's going to be fun to see.
I think they found their Barack Obama. That's that's my impression from this. You know, he has the story, you know, just like, what's Barack Obama's book? Tears of My Father, or Messages to My Father, whatever his book was.
Wow. That's a shame. I don't even know.
Whatever. Exactly.
Audacity of Hope. Is that it?
One of them. His earlier book, they tells his story about his life, right? You know, Vance has done the same thing, going to the elite education, coming up from, you know, Obama in his situation. He was a single parent home, rose up the ranks, you know what I mean? And it's so similar. And you're right. He is a good speaker. Let's call it what it is, right?
Yes.
He can speak well, he carries himself well, and he really represents the highest hopes of the white middle America who's struggling. Don't get it twisted. And I'm not talking, they're not even in the middle, to be honest with you. And they are struggling heavy with the loss of jobs, the loss of opportunity, good jobs, right? You could work at the Dollar General, which is in your neighborhood, but that has taken away your local business. You're still living in a trailer, and your family's addicted to meth in a crazy way that nobody, honestly, if the Republican Party was who they're really supposed to be, that's what they should be speaking to and talking about. And that's what the people should be pushing them to speak to and talk about, is the lack of job opportunities, the meth epidemic, housing crisis, and they're losing their children in a very major way in that part of the America. But J.D. Vance does speak to, he kind of glosses, his disappointment in who he is glosses over that. So despite our failures, despite the system failing us, we can all be J.D. Vance. And we can live vicariously through that. So it just makes it a big pick for me in terms of what the MAGA party is, because I think it is safe to say we should no longer call it the Republican Party. And just think of the power that Obama, and we'll get to this in a different story, he still wields within the Democratic Party. And I do see Trump see himself wielding that same kind of authority and power once they push to get Vance elected in 28.
Okay, I agree with what you said. I think what you just described is the sense or the characteristic or the likeness of J.D. Vance to Donald Trump. He's able to simultaneously connect with a Republican MAGA base, but also present policy and personal presentation as an elite. And so one of the things I was surprised was to see some pushback from the Appalachian community itself online. And so this is anecdotal, and it'll be interesting to see as he goes on campaign and is facing more questions. Because what I would ask Vice President nominee Vance is, what specific policies do the Republicans offer that are going to assist those same people whom he claims to represent and whom raised him? And I'm not saying that they didn't raise him. I'm not saying that part of his story is not true. Obviously it is. But, what are they going to do to help those people? Because everything that I hear in terms of policy is going to be a deconstruction of the government state. And that's going to spell disaster for those people, because that's going to mean less aid financially, less aid in health services, less aid in terms of education. And so I don't see how the policies that the party that he's representing is going to aid those people whom he claims to represent.
That's always been the case. And man, that's a great point, Jrob. The largest welfare county in America with 100% welfare is all white, right? And that's not just one county. That is indicative of the system in the state and where that part of the community is. The children who are on And like I say, this is anecdotal from just different things that I've seen from traveling and being a part of that world. They are in these foster homes. Parents are strung out, and it's hard. And they do need those social services, and it's not enough right now as we stand. And they're not speaking to that. But it's like the same thing you'll hear me say often. That doesn't bother me that they're not speaking to it. The people aren't forcing them to speak to it. Exactly. You want our vote. You need to speak to this crisis that's impacting us right now. But people are cool with that. Like I said, they have the image of I could be a J.D. Vance.
Well, this is why the Republicans insist on a continuation of the culture wars, because it's a distraction from the reality. This is the thing that made Dr. King so dangerous towards the end of his life, was because he began to see the commonality of the struggle between the poor white and the larger African-American community. And I think it's also a criticism of the Democratic Party, not a new one. It's not something that, of course, that I've, special insight that I have, but that they are unable to also speak to this base. And because there is a lot of shared need in terms of the Black community and the poor white community in this country. But race, over the entire history of this nation, has been the one issue that has allowed the elite, the political class, to distract the whites and the poor Blacks from coming together. And that's still happening in this very day.
I would say for Black people specifically, and looking at this situation, that's why it's so dangerous to say for a Black person that I'm part of the Republican Party. Because what it does is it says, I am willing to ignore the situation that Black people are in now, right? So as a Zennial, somebody who's between Gen X and the millennial group, like dead in the middle.
Gen Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gen Z. That's why you can't just go forward like what Donald's and all of them are trying to do, because when you don't speak to those issues directly and to those real world problems, that we didn't create the racial situation, but it's there. It exists. And white people, because they have the opportunity to be a J.D. Vance, they wanted to continue because they get that feeling of support indirectly. But directly, I've traveled across this country, literally from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, like passed through all of it. And with that being said, you see stretches, these trailers, you see the vast empty land, and you see in the middle of whether it's places where it's not a Black person within 100 miles, you see these Confederate flags, you see these MAGA signs posted up, you know what I mean, throughout the country in the support of what? That cultural wars, right? They always talk about social justice warriors, right? You're a cultural warrior. It's the same mess on the other side, and you don't even see it. But you have any final takes? Where does the MAGA party go from here? We're 4 months out or so from the election?
I think the strategy is clear from both sides. Get your base out. I think the Democrats' inability to articulate the positive of the Biden administration is indicative of why he's seeing pressure to step down. And so it's going to be exciting to see where we go from here. And again, how the J.D. Vance performs. And the last thing I want to say, I don't think I touched on this. I was not surprised at how subdued former President Trump was at the convention. Coming off a near-death experience, I think, it's only human that a person be shaken from that experience. And so I was not surprised that he didn't bring the energy that sometimes he typically doesn't. Let's not forget, he's 78 years old. And so although Biden's record age has allowed the Republicans to deflect from Trump's own age issues, at that stage of life or at any stage, I think that type of experience, is something that any human would be shaken from. And as much as I'm against his candidacy and his ascension to power again in this nation, I do want to say that I do thank the Lord that he was not murdered on national television, because the nation traditionally does not fare well from those type of experiences. And I just would not want to see the violence that I think will follow that type of action. So I'm glad that he's okay.
Nah, 100%. And I think that's one of the things too, that I'm glad the Democratic Party gave a little space for grace in that thing, and then ratchet it up. I think it's crank it back up again. Yeah, but I'm glad it wasn't immediate and right away, because it does speak to the character of the people involved. So when the people come out, he should have died, this and that, they just look low character to me. You know what I mean? It doesn't look, it's not a flex, as they say. It's actually the opposite of that, from my perspective at least.
Agreed.
The Republicans, I fully agree with you. Bring out your base. Who will bring out their base? Who will galvanize their base? And the question is, how will they do that? Through policies that they're offering them, or will it be through fear mongering? It looks like both sides are choosing fear mongering over actual policy, but we'll see with the Democratic convention coming up and see if we get that platform published and out to the people. So that's it. That's all we got for this episode. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, people.
Catch you on the flip. Peace.
All right.